Hello everyone, and welcome to Movie Nation, where we talk about the movies like it's a national pastime. I'm your host, Ken Reels, and today on the show, we got jam-packed with stuff. We've got your normal news, of course, and we're talking the favorite Alita Battle Angel, and we're going to be talking movie adaptations from page to screen, some of the ones that I personally enjoy, and why some of them can be interpretive, as it were. So, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ken Reels. I'm your host, and today on the show, we're going to go ahead and dive right into our movie reviews. As always, we have two movie reviews for you. And the first up, we have The Favorite. Now, this film was directed by Neophros Lanthimos. Sorry if I completely butchered his name. That is just the way it is. And this is honestly the most, despite him being a very obscure director and a very weird director in terms of his body of work, this is probably the most accessible of his entire filmography. And I didn't like it. I still didn't like it. I think The Favorite is a barely passable film. Barely watchable, in fact. And me sitting through this, oh boy, that was fun. And by fun, I mean, oh my god, why is this movie taking so... It's so long. It's so damn long. I don't think I've looked at my watch as many times as I did with this one. This one just... I was engaged in the story, and I thought it was great, but I kept going like, when is this movie gonna end? Like, when is it gonna end? It's just never ending. It was incredibly frustrating on multiple levels to just sit through. I couldn't fathom how that this movie was like 2+ hours long. It was excruciating. And that has nothing to do with the fact that the acting is superb. This is some great acting from all three ladies, and it was just a mess. Like, it was a mess in the sense that it really was just overlong and very odd at times. I specifically think, like, the editing of this film is really weird. There are some weird editing choices. And there's a scene in this movie where it just keeps doing these transitions, like fade transitions, instead of the cuts. And it's artsy. It's artsy-fartsy. And that could be good for some people, could be bad for others. And I'm in the... that was really weird. Story-wise, I think this is a great film. You have Rachel Weisz, who is essentially the Queen's, spoiler alert, secret lover. And her cousin shows up, played by Emma Stone, and things start to get a little odd. And the Queen, who is essentially starting to go crazy and die, at one point she ends up having a stroke, and that is a masterclass in acting, because like it's all in the performance, and you can just immediately, she had a stroke, and that's why she's like this in this moment. And it's just, it's great in terms of that. I think the acting is like superb. The acting's superb, but the execution, and the story is superb, but the execution is overlong and just takes forever to really get to where it needs to be. There are incredible artistic bits of this movie, and I have nothing against an artsy fartsy film, but what I have against it is it's just not great. It's not a great movie, in my humble opinion, and I understand why it got nominated for Best Picture, specifically because this is a movie that is very, very interesting. It was made for a very low amount of money, and it just works. It just simply works. And good for this movie. I can't say anything more than that, but oof, it was not, it just wasn't a good film, in my humble opinion. I think it's barely watchable. It flat out gets a 6 out of 10 from me. And now we're going to go ahead and jump into the other movie for the week, and that is Alita Battle Angel. And this is directed by Robert Rodriguez, produced by James Cameron. The original script was written by James Cameron and then rewritten by Robert Rodriguez. And to go into this movie, I had read the first 4 volumes of the manga. The first 4 volumes of the Alita Battle Angel Gundam manga. And I watched a bit of the OVA series that came out a while back in the 80s or 90s, I believe. Let me just double check myself. The original was the original release was 93. And so I know the basic story of what this film was setting up. So having that precursor knowledge kind of gave me a little bit of a feel for how this movie was going to play out. And you kind of start going, oh, this is how they're doing this. I said that multiple times while watching the film. And it was phenomenally visually beautiful. What I think is a slight fault of the movie is that it is a 5-act script condensed into a 3-act movie. And why I say that is because it feels like there's more to this. There was more to the original script from James Cameron, and obviously there was, because it was like a 300-page treatment that was handed to Robert Rodriguez, and he subsequently went and chopped it down to a sizable screenplay. It was about 100. This movie's just a little over 2 hours. I think a 3-hour film is probably what the original was kind of going for at minimum, like a 3-hour film. And it feels like it at times, and it just hoping for some. I was hoping for a little more cohesion when it came to building the structure of the script. The good thing about it is, visually it's great. The acting is great. Rosa Salazar, who I will fully admit is on my list of actresses that I absolutely adore and think she is super sexy. And she just imbues that in Alita in so many ways. And of course, people argued, oh, the anime eyes, that bothered me in the first original trailer that came out. Now, they clearly have subdued that in terms of the size of her eyes over the course of post-production. But they are large, and there are moments where you start to kind of like waver about here and there, but overall, like, you kind of like, okay, this is how this character looks, and you don't have, people keep misusing the term uncanny valley, not fully realizing what the fuck that means. It's not uncanny valley. Uncanny valley would be if her eyes were normal. If her eyes were normal, you'd probably have an issue. Though I think Weta and the guys at ILM and people like that have progressed performance capture technology to the point where we have characters like Caesar, who you believe is on screen. I believe Alita is in. You just have this character Alita on screen, and Rosa Salazar was on set in the motion capture, in the performance capture suit, while filming most of the on-screen bits. Where the movie falters, I think, is the chemistry between Rosa Salazar's Alita and Hugo, who is Hugo in the manga. And that relationship is essentially the core of where the core of this film kind of is a little not rotten per se, but just a little overripe, and it sours a bit of the film, but not to the point where it hinders the entire film's enjoyment. And I'm so happy that this movie is out there, that many people are praising it, audience-wise. There are some people that are saying they didn't enjoy it because of all the statements I made previously. And it's a matter of, what do you go to see a movie for? Do you go to see a movie for a good story? Do you see it for the visuals? Where do those certain things gauge how you enjoy a film? I mean, I'm still happy that I have this poster hanging up in my room. I'm proud to hang this up in my room because it is friggin' an awesome movie, and I was super happy that I actually got a copy of this poster and was able to hang it up because here in my room, because it is just absolutely phenomenal. It is a phenomenal movie that I'm probably going to end up going to see again at some point in the future. And this is a point where, like, the page to screen adaptation of this manga comes into play, because it is very, very interesting per se. It's a very interesting way to adapt the manga, and I'm kind of wondering if it truly deserves to be praised to a certain extent, and whether I'm happy with it. Like, I'm mixed, but I will say it is a hearty recommendation from me personally. And it's a solid 8 out of 10. It is not perfect by any stretch of the imagination. It is not something for everyone. but it is not. It is an above average film. It is not. Yeah, it was all right. I enjoyed myself, but I'm not willing to see it again. I'm willing to see Alita again. What I am not saying is that it is a perfect film. There are far better films out there, and I'm looking forward to, if this movie fully succeeds, which, considering the box office, it's going to be bolstered a lot from the international box office. I mean, it's already made about $100 million internationally. Domestically, it's not faring so well, but I'm hoping that it kind of picks up a little more steam in terms of word of mouth, and it makes some money before Captain Marvel drops in like 2 weeks. Which, oh boy, then once Captain Marvel is out, this movie is going to end up dipping really quickly in that sense. And I'm sad. I'm sad that that's going to happen, but I really, really hope that it does well. And so, that is going to be it for our movie reviews, and we're going to go ahead and go right into our news for today. And the first news story on the docket for today is that Mark Webb is being tapped to direct the Your Name remake from Paramount and Bad Robot. Now, this is based on the 2016 animated film, and Paramount and Bad Robot acquired the rights pretty much as soon as the film got its US debut early 2 years ago. Bad Robot's J.J. Abrams will produce. Genki Kanemura, who produced the original film, will also be a producer. Lindsay Weber will serve as an exec producer on the project. Eric Haser, the writer of Arrival, is writing a reimagined screenplay, and this is the thing with which I'm interested in. He's writing it will now follow a young Native American woman living in a rural area and a young man from Chicago who discover they're magically and intermittently swapping bodies. That is interesting. That is a very, very interesting story, and kind of it's a way to give the same idea of the traditionalism of our female protagonist in Your Name in the original film, and imbue it with a more Americanization of it. And I think if done correctly, it could be phenomenal. That's a matter of if it gets done correctly. Mark Webb has had some misses, but that is mostly due to studio interference when it comes to Amazing Spider-Man 2. Amazing Spider-Man 1, which I think is a phenomenal film, has some faults, but Amazing Spider-Man 2, which I didn't absolutely hate, did have issues, especially when it came to studio interference. He is also the director of 500 Days of Summer, which is a phenomenal film. And this is a quote from Komahara. Mark was our first choice to direct this refashioned interpretation of the film from the moment we explored creating an American version, said Kamahara. As we saw in 500 Days of Summer, Mark is a tremendous talent for telling great love stories, and in the same way moviegoers were captivated by the original film, we are certain Mark will engage fans with the original and an entirely new audience for these characters' beautiful journey. With J.J. Abrams producing, Eric Heiser writing, and Mark directing, this project officially has the team we dreamed about. And I am all for this. I'm super excited to see what happens, especially considering that this is a Paramount film, and Paramount lately has not been doing so well, for good reason. It has not been it's in trouble. Paramount is an in trouble studio right now, and it needs a very mega non franchise hit on their hands. And I'm hoping that this Your Name film, which I believe it doesn't have an actual release date, but I assume, considering they've got a director now signed on, we have a script writer who I'm sure isn't finished writing the script, but should be by the middle of this year. They'll probably start casting at the end of this year, and we might start filming next year. And who knows, we might end up getting this film in 2020 or early 2021. And I'm super excited. Your Name being probably one of my top anime films of all time, and probably my favorite of the director's work. I mean, I own the collector's edition of Your Name. And the Radwimp score, which is phenomenal. I'd love for them to kind of get someone on the level of Radwimps to kind of do the score for it. I don't know how you would do that, but I'd be I'm more looking forward to who they get for the score of this film and where it goes down the line. But like casting, I'm gonna guess they're gonna cast two unknowns. They might cast our Native American as an unknown, and then cast someone big for the male lead, and see how that works. There are a couple of people that come to mind when it comes to young actors that could possibly pull this off. So I'm looking. I'll be looking for casting news further down the line. Probably we won't hear any casting news for another 4 or 5 months. But overall, this is a project I'm gonna keep my eye on, and I hope you guys keep your eye on as well. And now we're gonna transition into a multi-part story here, because earlier this past week, the Oscars announced what they were going to cut from the actual broadcast, and the ones that they were cutting are the problem. Concern, and there was a massive concern over the categories that won't be televised. And the categories were cinematography, film editing, hairstyling and makeup, and live action short. And the live action short film, I understand not doing that because not many of the live action shorts are readily available. That makes sense. Hairstyling, makeup, okay, but not necessarily a great choice. I would say the animated shorts, more the animated shorts could possibly be put there. But you have film editing and cinematography, which, oh my gosh, that is ridiculous. There is no way you should be doing that, because the film editing and the cinematography are just absolutely essential to making a film. Why the fuck are you doing that? And so a whole bunch of people in the industry wrote an open letter to the Academy saying that, let me pull up the quote. This is a big misunderstanding kind of thing between the Academy and everything. And ABC has been pushing for better ratings for the Oscars. Now, granted, the Oscars are second only to the Super Bowl in terms of ratings, but they want more. That's ridiculous. So let's go into this open letter to the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences and the producers of the 91st Annual Academy Awards broadcast. On Monday, February 11th, John Bailey, president of the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences, announced that this year's Oscars presentation for Best Cinematography, along with film editing, live-action short, and makeup and hairstyling, will not be broadcast live, but rather presented during a commercial break. This decision was made to reduce the length of the show from 4 hours to 3. The vocal response from our peers and the immediate backlash from industry insiders over the Academy's decision makes it clear that it is not too late to have this decision reversed. The Academy was founded in 2007 to recognize and uphold excellence in the cinematic arts, inspire imagination, and help connect the world through the universal medium of motion pictures. Unfortunately, we have drifted from this mission in our pursuit of presenting entertainment rather than in presenting celebration of our art form and the people behind it. Relegating these essential cinematic crafts to lesser status in the 91st Academy Awards ceremony is nothing less than an insult to those who have devoted our lives and passions to our chosen profession. The show's director, Glenn Weiss, has stated that he will determine what emotional resonant moments from the 4 winners' speeches will be selected to air later in the broadcast. The show will cut any additional comment from presenters as well as a recitation of the nominees as they see fit. Such an interpretation of the Academy Awards telecast has been altered over time to keep the format fresh, but never by sacrificing the integrity of the Academy's original mission. When the recognition of those responsible for the creation of the outstanding cinema is being diminished by the very institution whose purpose it is to protect it, then we are no longer upholding the spirit of the Academy's promise to celebrate film as a collaborative art form. To quote our colleague Seth Rogen, what better way to celebrate achievements in film than to not publicly honor the people whose job it is to literally film things? And this is signed by a multitude of cinematographers, including Roger Deakins, who just recently won the Academy Award for his first Academy Award for Blade Runner 2049. As well as some of the notable directors, you have Ang Lee, Spike Jonze, Damien Chazelle, Seth Rogen, Martin Scorsese, and Quentin Tarantino. And Ang Lee, I'm pretty sure all of these directors have been nominated at least once in the Academy's history, as well as a multitude of other filmmakers that are listed down below. None that stand out in my mind from this list. You can look at the actual list. I will leave the link to the news article and the open letter in the show notes. But that leads us into the next thing, which just dropped on Friday night, and that was the Oscars relent and will air all 24 categories live after the outcry. Who says public shaming doesn't work after a week of very vocal protests from not just the viewing public but industry professionals and the Academy members. The Academy has reversed its decision to award 4 categories during commercial breaks and will instead air all 24 Oscar categories live during the telecast, as it has done in the past. The change was in effect to trim the telecast down to a sharp 3 hours, which ABC requested after particularly low ratings last year, which completely negating the fact that the way in which people watch television has changed drastically over the last decade. I'm sorry. It just freaking pissed me off. The Academy announced earlier this week that Best Cinematography, Film Editing, Hair, Makeup and Hairstyling, and Live Action Short would be awarded during commercial breaks, and edited down clips of these acceptance speeches would be aired later during the ceremony. The outcry was instatuous and vocal, as folks had already been up in arms over the plan, of which was first announced last year, while some argued that since the winners would still air later in the telecast, it was all fine and good. The idea of showing clips of certain winners on a tape delay simply relegates those categories as also ran status. An open letter signed by prominent folks in the film community urged the Academy to air all 24 winners live, and Variety now reports that following a Thursday night meeting with top cinematographers, the Academy leadership, which includes President John Bailey and CEO Dawn Hudson, have pledged to air every award category during the telecast on February 24th. Their statement reads below. The Academy has heard the feedback from its membership regarding the Oscar presentation of 4 awards: cinematography, film editing, live action short, and makeup and hairstyling. All Academy Awards will be presented without edits in our traditional format. We look forward to Oscar Sunday, February 24th. This is great news, and in truth, nearly every boneheaded decision the Oscars producers and Academy leadership tried to make this year was reversed thanks to public outcry. That includes the popular film category, which is now shelved, an idea to air only 2 performances for original song nominees, which got reversed late 2 weeks ago, which I did not cover on this show, but did happen, and they're going to be airing all 5 in a short format. They're going to be cut down to a minute and a half performance, and not inviting last year's acting winners to present during the ceremony, which that is also stupid. I did not know that, and fucking what the hell. I'm happy about this reversal and hope the Academy takes it to heart. ABC may be whining about ratings, but the Oscars are still regularly the most watched live show outside of the Super Bowl, and crafting a ceremony expressly for those that love the Oscars, not one that tries to appeal to younger and uninterested viewers, is the way to go. It'll be interesting to see how this plays out, as producers now have little over a week to rework their plans and make room for all 24 categories to live on air. Will more dumb decisions leak out next week? Probably. Stay tuned. And we have a little Oscar, which I am interested in, like, the color scheme for this year's Oscars. You got this magenta and purple and red. It looks really nice. I really dig the look. And so we're actually going to go ahead and jump into the trailer of the week. And the trailer of the week, this week, I've chosen the film with Seth Rogen and Charlize Theron, Long Shot. And this film looks super interesting, and you have, like, this trailer starts off with Saul, whose actor's name escapes me, from Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad, comes in, and he's like, "Oh, I want you to become the next president," and Charlize Theron is Secretary of State. And she runs into Seth Rogen, who is a journalist, and who they have a past together. And it turns out that she kind of starts to like him a little bit, because he's just a interesting cat. And now we have the idea that okay, she wants to talk to Seth Rogen, and she has interest in him, and so you have this little interesting romantic comedy with Seth Rogen and Charlize Theron. And the idea is that these are two people you would never expect to kind of fall in love with each other. And I kind of understand it in a way. And it's really, really interesting. I really, really dig this movie. And I'm looking forward to it because this looks actually kind of good in more ways than one. It's gonna be an interesting film for sure, and I love the goofiness of comparing her to Kate Middleton and her dating Danny DeVito, but it's really good, and I really dig it. I really do. I really dig this movie, at least from this trailer. Like, I'm looking forward to it because that is coming out in May. And so that brings us to our topic, which is the idea of from page to screen, films that are adapted from original screenplay, adapted from a previous work. You can say that we're a book or a manga or a light novel, what have you, or even just another film in and of itself, or kind of like inspired by said film. And I wouldn't necessarily say all of them. Some of them I would consider just straight up remakes. Some of them I would consider adaptations, specifically when it comes to taking foreign films and remaking them in an American setting. The Departed being one of those adaptations that I think is very interesting, and of course won Scorsese the Academy Award, even though I think that's not his best film in his filmography. I'm more a fan of Casino, even though that movie is incredibly long. But I think it is I think The Departed is a very, very good film. And then there are some films that you don't know are actual adaptations. Walk Among the Tombstones being a film I really, really dug when it came out with Liam Neeson. And I found out afterwards that it is actually an adaptation of a series of books. And this character is a book character, and it's done in such a good way that I really, really dug it. Like, Walk Among the Tombstones is one of those hidden gems where you're just looking going, wait, that was actually an adaptation? Whoa, that is really, really cool. And it just, I'm super, super excited for that we're getting some of these great adaptations, especially when we have Alita that just came out, and we've got a Cowboy Bebop adaptation coming from Netflix, and I'm looking forward to that. I'm wondering who they're going to cast. And this is just phenomenal. Like, we are in a heyday when it comes to adaptations, and interpreting those adaptations in a faithful way that give tribute to the characters that they're adapting, but also doing their own thing and fitting into the medium that is film. I think Marvel does a phenomenal job in adaptation, especially because we've got Captain Marvel coming up. What they did with Infinity War, taking a character that is very, very weird as Thanos, a character that is infatuated with the idea, with the manifestation of death. He's in love with literal death in the Marvel universe, and taking that idea and changing it to make it fit more with a little more realistic idea, but also still staying true to the ideals of the character, where you now essentially make him an eco-terrorist. And that is a really cool interpretation. That's how you do it. You have to interpret these characters and make them make sense in the medium that you're presenting them in. You kind of want to give it a more broader audience appeal. And sometimes that works, sometimes it doesn't. There are plenty of comic book adaptations that fall flat on their face. And sometimes you kind of middle with a lot of interesting ideas, like Batman vs. Superman, which I personally can see all of the elements that they were taking from and kind of hodgepodging them together into something relatively watchable. Speaking of watchable, Watchmen. A lot of people argue that Watchmen they don't like Watchmen because they changed the ending. However, this is my personal opinion, Watchmen is good because they changed the ending. And they took the character of Dr. Manhattan and brought him to the forefront of the conflict. Because if, for all intents and purposes, Watchmen is about two people. It is about the Rorschach and Dr. Manhattan. Those are really the two characters that are driving the plot. Rorschach in terms of the overall story and the mystery of it all, and then Dr. Manhattan holds the emotional core of what Watchmen is. And oddly enough, Dr. Manhattan being a person and a character whose emotions are so stagnant. They're basically flatlined. And his struggle to kind of come to grips with the fact that he does have emotion, despite him being so otherworldly. It's a great interpretation of this character, and I think Zack Snyder really honed in on the aspects of the comic that would resonate with audiences. And so the change in ending actually made sense, despite the movie still being almost 3 hours long. And it just works. Like, I'm never bored watching Watchmen. I've seen it multiple times, and it's just great. It's just a great film. And I'm just going through like my list of Blu-rays here that I own. You have movies like Silver Linings Playbook, which I think is fine. I think it's an adaptation that does a fair job at interpreting that kind of story of mental health and the struggles you can have with that. But another one that absolutely I've absolutely going to be ridiculed if I don't comment on this, and that is the Harry Potter franchise and its interpretations. Now, I will say, I have a buddy of mine, and we went to go see the sixth Harry Potter film, Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. I will not say Half-Blood Prince is my favorite book in the franchise. I think Goblet of Fire is, of which the movie adaptation of Goblet of Fire I can't stand. I think it is the worst in the entire franchise. It is a mess of a film. But Half-Blood Prince, which is probably middle range in terms of books, I absolutely think that is my favorite film in the entire Harry Potter franchise. And my buddy, whose Half-Blood Prince is his favorite book, he didn't like it. He absolutely hates that movie. And I think it came when I was watching Half-Blood Prince, I was also kind of knee-deep into the idea of screenplays and filmmaking techniques like motif work, and I immediately got the vibe that David Yates was going for. And this was the first film that David Yates directed, if I believe. No, wait. He directed Order of the Phoenix beforehand. Order of the Phoenix is just a fine film. I have no real justification on me watching that film. I will watch it in conjunction with everything else, but I won't really watch it consistently as I would some of the other films in the franchise. And I really did love Harry Potter 6 because it had all these great motifs, and what it was doing in terms of presenting a much more subdued story when it came to the Half-Blood Prince, the mystery not necessarily being a huge part of it. And I think that's where a lot of people can take issue with Harry Potter 6, because the mystery isn't a big part of it. Though some of the emotional moments when it comes to the mystery of who the Half-Blood Prince is and the reveal, I think was executed exactly the way I wanted it to, but I will fully admit that the emotional punch of the reveal of the mystery doesn't hit as hard as it does in the books, but it is shot exactly the way I would have pictured it in my head. And I think that's why I like Half-Blood Prince as much as I do. And I don't hate any of the Harry Potter films. I just would say there are some that I would genuinely like rewatching more than others. And that's pretty much where I can say that franchise goes. There are some bad adaptations, namely Last Airbender. Hi, M. Night Shyamalan. I wrote a review of Last Airbender, and I think the most prolific quote I had was, "It made me question Shyamalan's grasp of the English language because of the constant mispronunciation of certain character names and the stilted dialogue was so bad in that film. I was really thinking, does this man know how to write English? And I still stick with that statement. I know M. Night can write very well now that I've seen a lot of his other stuff, but Last Airbender was a mess when it came to adaptation. It was not. It's not a good adaptation in any way, shape, or form, and it's just a mess. And sometimes adaptations are good, sometimes they're bad. As a predominant person that watches a lot of anime, anime adaptations happen all the freaking time. And some people will cry foul a lot of the time when it comes to being true to the source material. And I don't think being true to the source material means everything in the world. What I do think is it needs to fit the medium it is being presented in. Look at the Cabaneri of the Iron Fortress adaptations. If you don't know, Cabaneri of the Iron Fortress is an original work, but it ended up getting adapted into 2 recap films. And those recap films, I think, do a great job at taking the hours upon hours of the anime and putting them into 2 hour-and-a-half, 2-hour films. I think the second recap film, which takes the second half of the series in adapting it, I think that is the go-to. I would say watch the first half of the anime and then transition into the second recap film and watch it that way, so you get a much more concise story and actually enjoy yourself. And sometimes these recap films are a complete clusterfuck. I think most notably the Beyond the Boundary recap film, going all over the place, and I couldn't even finish watching that recap film because it was a mess. It has no flow to it. It just kind of goes boom, 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 boom. And this, and this, and this, and this, and this. It was not good. It's not a good, in terms of adapting it to a film medium. And there are plenty of films that could be good. And of course, we're going to get more page-to-screen adaptations over the course of the future. And when it comes to adaptations, I want a good adaptation in my mind is always about if that adaptation is wholeheartedly well done. It needs to fit to the medium it is being presented in. Whether that's television, whether that's film. In this case, film is, you need to fit the medium. And that can be a very tough task to do when you have hours of, when you're adapting, say, a television show like The Last Airbender. You're adapting 30 half-hour episodes of television and condensing it into like a 2-hour film. That can be very, very difficult to do, and I'm not necessarily faulting M. Night Shyamalan as a screenwriter. He tried to do a very tough task. Too bad that I feel that he didn't do a good job at that. And then when it comes to Harry Potter films, that is a matter of interpretation. What is the important bits to add to a story? How do we break down the core of a film or the core of a book? And that's where you need to figure it out. You need to figure out the core of the story. If you figure out the core of the story, a lot of times you can get a very good adaptation. When it comes to Alita Battle Angel, I think they got some of the core right, and it falters because that core is slightly overripe. It is not rotten, but it is slightly overripe, and I can see where a lot of people would take issue. And as a result, I think Alita is a fair movie. It is not average, but it is not a good... It is not a must-see for everyone. And this is where adaptation can falter. Adaptation is a great medium, and it needs to be fostered by someone who knows the source material at its core. When you sell the rights to a studio, you need to, as a creator, you need to kind of figure out, do these people understand the core of my story? And if they don't, I should be very wary of them taking my tale and bringing it to a different medium. And that's essentially how I think adaptations should be done. And with that, guys, we're going to end it off for this week. Next week, I have no idea what I'm seeing. I'm probably going to be seeing Fighting With Your Family if it gets a wider release. I hope it does, because this week, when it was quote-unquote supposed to be out, it was only playing in New York City, and I'm not going into New York City for one film. F that. But we will probably be talking about Fighting With My Family. Whatever dumb Oscar news comes up next week, we'll probably talk about that. And of course, we'll always have our trailer of the week. I'm going to go and get out of here, guys. Thank you guys for watching and or listening to Movie Nation. You can find me at Ken Reels on Twitter and Instagram. And you can find the podcast over at Movie Nation Pod on Twitter or movie-nation.com. Thank you guys for that. And I'm going to get out of here. So, bye. Thank you for listening to Movie Nation.
Where shall I go? What shall I do?
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
You can like us on Facebook. Go to facebook.com/Movie Nation Podcast. Or follow us on Twitter at Movie Nation Pod.
Nobody likes you. Everybody hates you.
If that's so, and you would like to get in contact with us or leave feedback for the show, you can do so at the respective socials or send us an email, movienation@hotmail.com. That's movienation@hotmail.com. Or you can do so on our episode post over at movie-nation.com. That's movie-nation.com.
And tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom!
And you have the freedom to listen to us next time.
He's looking at you, kid.